Hi. Today, I'm going to show you how to replace the valve cover gasket in a BMW N55 engine. The N55 is BMW's 6-cylinder turbocharged engine, which was introduced in 2009 model year BMWs and continued until it was phased out beginning in 2015. The N55 was used in the 2 Series, 3 Series, 4 Series, 5 Series, X3 and X5 model BMWs with 6-cylinder engines. When these engines hit about 75,000 miles, give or take 20,000 miles, the valve cover gasket will begin to deteriorate enough that oil will start to leak out. And because of the way the engine is positioned in the engine bay, it's slightly slanted, that oil will drip down onto the exhaust manifold where it will burn, and that burning oil smell will get blown right into the passenger compartment, and it's not very pretty. If you leave it untreated, of course, the leak will get worse, and soon you'll have clouds of oily smoke coming out of your engine bay, which I don't think you want, and neither do your neighbors. So let's talk about the cost and the difficulty. According to people I asked, BMW dealers in the United States will charge about $2,500 for this procedure, and good independent shops will charge about $1,500. Doing it yourself and being very thorough, you can get it done for about $400 in parts. Now, you could go bare bones and just replace the gasket, which would cost you, well, only $30, but that's not a good idea. For one thing, there are some one-time use parts that will go through, which you should replace along with it, but mainly the valve cover itself tends to deteriorate at about this mileage. It will develop minor cracks, it could warp, and it also contains the PCV valve and PCV system, and they tend to fail at around this mileage as well. So as you'll see, this procedure is pretty labor intensive, and you probably don't want to just replace a $30 part and come back and spend another 4 to 6 hours replacing another part. So let's talk about these parts that we're going to replace. You'll want to have a complete valve cover. BMW, when I looked, charged about $550 for the part, but I found one that's manufactured by L-Ring and ordered that instead. And when I got it and compared it to the valve cover that came out of the car, they looked exactly the same. Every little casting mark, minor imperfections in the plastic, little date stamps, everything was exactly the same. So I'm convinced L-Ring makes the valve cover that BMW uses, but they won't tell me. But anyway, in addition to the valve cover with the gasket, you need a few other parts. One of the parts you'll need, most likely, is the PCV hose, or PCV breather hose, because that tends to fail as well at about this age. If you haven't replaced it by now, it's probably going to disintegrate and crack when you remove it. So those cost about $60, unfortunately. In addition, there's a gasket called the Valvetronic motor seal, which is just a couple bucks, and you need 2 one-time use screws to put that in. So that's about all for the parts you have to replace. In my chassis, there were 4 one-time use bolts that hold an engine brace in place. So they cost me another $16. I bought those as well, and I'll show you how they go in. In addition, once you have the valve cover off, there's a small thing called the Valvetronic oil squirter, and that cost me about $30. And I decided to replace that. You don't have to, but it has an extremely small passageway which lubricates a critical engine component. If there's any sludge inside of that thing and you won't really be able to see it, why, your engine could fail. So I figured it was worth the extra 50 bucks while I have everything apart, or 30 bucks, sorry, while I have everything apart. I replaced that as well. That's up to you. So as far as I know, that's about it for parts, unless you want to do a spark plug change at the same time, because it'll save you an awful lot of time, as you'll see. A set of new plugs costs, I think, around $60. So those are the parts. So how difficult is it? Can you do this yourself? Well, I would say it's quite a bit more difficult than an oil change, but not nearly as difficult as dismantling or retiming an engine. In general, there are a lot more steps, and you'll follow along and you'll see all of them. So as long as you do all of them and you're methodical and you take your time, yes, you can do this if you've worked on cars before. You just need to make sure that you have the right tools and you have the car in a place where it won't get rained on, and you've got a solid 6 hours to work on it. However, besides the torque tightening the gas lines precisely, which I'll show you how to do, there are no really critical steps in the procedure. You just make sure you detach everything correctly and remove everything correctly, and it's mostly all nuts and bolts, as you'll see. So let's get started.
So before you start, you must disconnect the battery, which is most often found in the boot. This avoids petrol being squirted if the pump gets activated.
So now with the cover off, this car is different because we've replaced a hose that goes from here to here, a breather hose, or PCV breather, with an oil catch can. You should have your own oil breather hose replacement ready, because this hose gets very brittle, and if this piece needs replacing, the valve cover, this hose probably does too. So this trim piece comes off by removing 3 10mm plastic bolts. You only have to move them 90 degrees. You don't spin them off. And then there's a plastic ring here. You lift up, and then this piece should come straight out. There's another piece on the other side. You have to do the same thing because we're going to take off a very large brace. Okay, next we'll move the rubber that covers the brace. So this insulating rubber just pulls forward to come loose, pretty easy. I should be able to leave this wire in place. This plastic piece has to come out, and then the metal brace. So these are large E-Torx bolts that'll hold the brace in. This is all one piece. The rest of this, the other 2 bolts are here and here. We have to pop these plastic covers off to get to them. Hopefully, yeah. Okay. So a lot of the stuff that covers this part of the engine, it's going to vary by which car you have. Same engine, but some of the plastics and stuff are a little different. And a lot of these models, the intake, instead of coming over the front like in this car, it goes over the back, so you have to take it out. But I'm lucky, I don't have to worry about that. But along with that metal brace, there's this big piece of plastic. It's held on by what looks like 6 10mm bolts. So off it goes. Three. Oh, there's one here too. 7 of them. Oh, there's a little plastic rivet attaching it to that piece of rubber over there, so that's going to have to come loose, it looks like. Now that's loose. This little fella I'm going to put right back here so we can find him later. Now comes another important piece of plastic. With that out of the way, we can remove this. We should be able to remove this piece of rubber, which is just sound insulation. So what has to come off is this entire piece. So everything that you see on top of it, besides this wire, is going to have to go. So we will start. We'll start with these oxygen sensors wires. 2 of them. Going to make sure that we somehow label them so we can get them back together again correctly. They should, they should be designed. I think they are, so that you can't attach this to here. But let's just be careful. So I'll try the old zip tie trick. Not too tight. Okay. Separating the O2 sensor connectors is very easy if you know how. So on this model, and I guess all of them, first there's a locking tab here. See, you can separate that. You have to move it a little bit with your thumb. Then there's a tab here, right here, which you lift with the screwdriver, just like that, just a little bit, and then they'll separate really easily. Okay, so let's do it with this one. Get this out of the way. I've already snapped this loose. The screwdriver comes in here. Press down. And it comes apart really easily. See? Just like that. So you're actually lifting up to get over that piece in the connector right there. Okay? Okay, now with O2 sensors separated, I'll now remove the Valvetronic motor actuator. I think that's what it is. This is the Valvetronic motor down here, so this is the cable to it. Okay, comes off very easily. Just move it over here with everything else. Now I'm going to take this bracket off, which was holding the O2 sensors in place. It's T30. Okay, so that's going to go back on the new valve cover. Okay, next we can start, let's see, I'll keep this here. We can start pulling off all this electrical here, and then we're going to pull this piece off of here. So the electrical that we have are the ignition coils, and then we have the grounds to the fuel injector. These metal covers have to come off. Your car might have some vacuum lines here, and there's 2 vacuum connectors here you might have. I don't have them on this car because it's a newer one where they replaced the vacuum assist with electric pumps. But you know, your mileage may vary. So once we pull off the injectors and the connectors to the injectors, the rest should be easy. The injectors are really easy to remove. I'm sorry, these aren't the injectors. These are the ignition coils. The ignition coils are pretty easy to remove. Okay, there's the electric connection comes out. These are all mix and match, so you don't need to put them back in any order. They're all identical. Come on. Okay, just run an extension through. 1, 2. If you want to do, if you're due for a spark plug change, boy, now's a great time. Save yourself a lot of time. I love this popping sounds. And one more. There we go. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is take these injector lines off, because I don't want to do that, but there's the connectors to the injectors, these grounds, not much left to do here. Let's take this off. These are some E-Torques. So this is the Valvetronic motor. You have to remove this gasket. This part has to be replaced. It's a one-time use part, and the bolts are one-time use as well. So to go through, the parts you have to replace for is the whole valve cover. You really should replace the whole valve cover, which comes with a gasket. This Valvetronic gasket and these two bolts. This PCV breather hose, you're going to have to replace it. I'm telling you, if you try to think you'll reuse it, you probably won't. And then lastly, that brace that we took off, those bolts, those giant E-Torques bolts, those are one-time use bolts. Of course, you can put them back in and they'll work. You know, if you need to get replacements, order them. But I guess for safety purposes, you're supposed to, yeah, these big fat ones, you're supposed to replace them. Okay, now this gasket should just pop right off, right? Of course it doesn't. There we go. So that's the gasket, and it's this entire piece that's, they say, one-time use. Okay, so the next step in removing all this electrical stuff is I'm going to take off these three ground nuts. They're 8mm nuts. Crack. And you know, heaven help you if they fall in these spark plug wells. Maybe it's better to take them off before the ignition coils, because you don't want to be falling out here. Okay. Yay. So to repeat, if you're a little new at auto work, be very careful taking these out, because those 8mm, man, if they fall, there's so many places for them to go, and you'll be sad. You'll be sad. That will suck. And you know, the reason experienced mechanics don't is because, man, we've been there. We've done that, and it stinks. Oh, here it is. I see. Okay, so if we'll have it look, but see how this is oval shaped? On the flat side of the oval, there's a tab. You reach in, like here, pull it away. Pull it away, and it slides right out. So that should make the rest of these pretty easy. Okay. Yeah, not so hard at all, once you know how. Okay. That wasn't so bad at all. Okay. I'm going to have all the electrical out, so I think just these Torx bolts come out. Okay, this guy. Well, looks like we need a swivel, maybe, or something. Okay, now we're getting close to that. It's going to fall into the engine bay. Okay. Got that one. Okay. Okay, this is loose here. Something's holding us up here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Awesome. Okay, what's next? Looks like these stay, and it's just the fuel injector. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that. There's this line here. Okay, this line here clips on to the back of the valve cover. So it looks like that's going to have to unclip. come loose or something. Oh boy. That is nasty. Okay, so to attack this wire, I'm going to try to disconnect it. This is definitely your mileage may vary. It depends on your car's configuration, but I can pop this plastic cover off, and this looks like, I don't know, one's 12 volt hot and one's ground. I don't know which is which, but it's this one that's causing us the trouble. So let's see if we just remove it. Okay, that was quite easy. Now, can we get this to move? Clipped in there, and clipped in there. It's just very, okay, there, it's out of the way now. Okay, now, this, it came off. I guess he was on the heat, kind of clipped to the heat shield, so I'll just put him back on. He just slides back on, and then that cable will come back in there. No problem. And I can start to see a lot of grime down here, and it's because this has been leaking. And so it gets all over this heat shield and it cooks, and that's what we're smelling. And if the leak gets worse, of course, it'll just drip directly onto the catalytic converter, and we'll get smoke and, you know, potentially a fire, and probably not, but it's not going to be fun to drive around in this car if it smells like burning oil all the time. So all we got to do is take these guys off and then take off these, I don't know, 20 odd screws. So I'll put a towel under here and try to depressurize that. So we fully expect this towel to saturate with gasoline. So I'm gonna wear gloves, obviously, and I'll make sure I toss that rag away when I'm done with it, because we're gonna make a mess. So that looks like, by the way, on some of these models, you have these fittings here and here. As you can see on this one, these are welded, so I only have to remove them here. And then this whole pipe comes out. But we depressurize here. Okay, I can smell gasoline. It can start squirting out anytime, because it is under pressure. And this is the reason why we disconnect the battery. That and the fact I just pulled that cable. Okay, I pulled that. Okay, that's off. I don't know how much gas has come out, but so we should be good. Now we can take these guys off with, like, I don't know, crow foot. Looks like 13 millimeter crow. Not 13. It is 14. Okay. And gas comes out. These are not very tight. So once, after a third of a turn, they just spin loose. Okay. Okay, so no fun. This fuel rail is bolted in 1, 2, 3, 4 places. So we already loosened it here. And looks like the electric control. if I have to loosen it there, but okay, that comes right off. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 13 millimeter bolts. Looks like. Let's try 11. 11. Drop this bolt. You drop this bolt, you'll be hating life. I tell you. I don't even know where these bolts would go if you drop them. Okay, 4 bolts. Okay, we now have 6 fuel injector inlets exposed. It takes some rubber glove. Okay. When the valve cover comes off, dirt and oil can fall. We don't want to go with the open injectors.
Now to remove that valve cover.
Okay, 26 E-Torx 10s. Let's start with the easy ones. Crack. 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 Okay, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Oops. Now, let's see, where's the rest? The rest will need some swivel, I guess. And I'm going to have to take this off right here. Move that bracket out of the way. So that's going to take a torque 20, 25, something like that. We'll see. You know, if you need to use a swivel adapter, I don't know how you're going to get a torque wrench to work. This guy's not useful. Okay. Ooh boy. Okay, so there's one here. Thank you, God. And then there's going to be 3 in the back. So yeah, I think that's going to take some other kind of effort, like, you know, small 1/4 inch drive or something like that. Yeah, okay, well this was attached to the valve cover, so yeah, for sure that needed to come off. And I hope I remember that it goes there. Sorry about the noise, but I wanted to do this outdoors so the light was better. Okay, so he's loose. Now we just have to worry about the 3 in the back. And the one that's... oh man. That one. You know, there's an easy way to do this. You just pay somebody. Maybe there's 3 back here. This is the part where I just want to give up. I literally like want to give up right now. Oh man, that is just crazy. You cannot see them. You just absolutely cannot see these things. And if I drop this back there, like, oh man, I'll never find it. So you can see it's like about this deep, except it's here, and there's 3 of them. Let's see, okay, there's one. I have no idea how I'm going to get to this. Okay, got that one. Okay, pretty sure we've spun that one off. There it is. Got it. Don't know if I got While I'm here, there's a piece here called the squirter. This sends oil to the Valvetronic motor. It's a super small passageway. I'll show you. This is the replacement part. I don't know if we get the focus on it, but the hole in this is sub-millimeter. It's extremely small. So if this clogs up with any gunk, you get all kinds of problems, right? The Valvetronic motor will fail, and that can lead to a complete engine failure. So I figured, after all this, I might as well replace this little piece. It's not part of the usual procedure, but it made sense to me. This is an eTorx E8, and it is also one-time use. It was quite tight. You throw this away. That's it. Must be it. Just like that, huh? Okay.
Now clean the machined metal mating surfaces using a soft towel. Nothing abrasive or scraping, but make sure they are nice and clean. Clean the heat shield as oil will have dropped onto that area and will continue to smoke and smell. Then place the old valve cover on a bench next to the new one and note the location of any studs, such as those for the beauty cover. Transfer any items that need keeping from the old valve cover to the new one, and then start the process of refitting the new valve cover.
That feels on really well. Now we just tighten up. Oh boy, oh boy.
So I have included the reassembly notes that Marshall has included, but I'm not going to read them out because you can pause this if you need to view these. So I'll crack straight on with Marshall talking about the reassembly.
Okay, let's wrap things up. So once you've removed the valve cover, you need to transfer some vehicle-specific fittings from the old valve cover to the new one. On this car, we had to transfer these mounting studs here, and I think one more back there, which hold the beauty cover in place. Yours might vary a little bit. You just have to compare the two. They just unscrew with a wrench, and you screw them right back on. Then we torqued all the valve cover bolts to 6 foot-pounds using the diagram that's shown here. Next, we reattached the fuel lines and we torqued them to 17 foot-pounds. If you've disconnected the larger fitting right here, that gets torqued to 22 foot-pounds, and the 4 bolts that hold the fuel rail to the engine are torqued to 10 foot-pounds. Also, there's an electrical connector at the end of the fuel rail right here. Don't forget to reattach that. Next, I put the 2 battery cables back in place because this one routes down low and you don't want to cover it. And then the black one you can do now, or you can do a little later. Then we put this electrical harness back and we reattached the ignition wires, the fuel injection cables, and the grounds. They were very easy to get back all in the right way, so you're not going to mix up this one with that one. It's very straightforward once you put this harness back in place, so don't worry about that. Then remember to reattach the 2 oxygen sensor cables and bolt that in place. All right. Then the PCV breather hose, which goes right here, and in yours it's going to go down, and mine it goes to the oil catch can, and the oil cap. Next, replace any vacuum lines and other vehicle-specific connections that you took off when you removed your valve cover. Now, before we put the rest of the vehicle trim back, we're going to reattach the 12-volt battery's ground terminal, and we're going to check our work. When you start your engine up, you're going to notice 2 things. First, your engine is going to crank for a little while before it starts. That's perfectly normal. You need to build up the pressure in the fuel rail until you're going to get ignition. So don't worry that it takes a little while to crank. The second thing you're going to notice is your engine is going to be very noisy. That's because you've removed quite a bit of sound insulating material from your engine, and it's going to sound like chattery, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. But do take a look at each of the fuel connections just to be absolutely sure that there's no gasoline shooting out. But it won't be. You're going to be fine, and it's going to work. Okay, now let's finish by buttoning everything up. And we're going to begin on this car with the engine brace.
Now to replace the strut brace.
To replace the strut brace, on this car, we first replace this piece of insulating foam. Now, there's several holes in the foam which correspond to studs that are on the valve cover and intake manifold, as well as this metal bracket here. So this metal bracket can easily punch a new hole through this soft rubber. So make sure you carefully fit it over that metal bracket. And when you do, these mounting studs should poke through perfectly. Okay. This cable, the O2 sensor cables, will go underneath, or somewhat underneath, but this black cable will go over. It's going to later fit in to a piece of insulating foam that we're going to fit in. Okay, so this is in place, and now this plastic piece will fit into place. Okay, that's easy, and it's secured in place with these 10mm bolts. I have already attached a plastic grommet between this piece of foam and this piece. Okay, and next, the strut tower brace itself. Yours may be different on some models. They're 2 separate braces. Okay, they line up to these 2 holes here. And now, I'll go find the 4 replacement bolts I bought. these are the big fat E-Torx bolts. Something you might notice about the way I work is I think it's a bad idea to put tools and bolts in the engine bay. I sometimes use a magnetic tray to hold bolts, and that's it. I try to use a table or a cart to hold wrenches and tools and parts, because it's way too easy to just bump one of them down into the engine bay and lose it, or you close the hood and maybe you crack it on the tool or the part. It's a very good practice to just keep stuff out of your engine bay. We snug these up a little bit with a standard ratchet. Now we're going to torque them to 41 foot-pounds. You need to check your manual specifications for the torque value for these. So that's the first stage. The second stage is to tighten each bolt an additional 90 degrees. Okay, so I want to warn you as clearly as possible. Do not do this if you're reusing these bolts, because if you're reusing these bolts and you torque them an additional 90 degrees, they'll definitely snap. Okay, so 90 degrees should take us to right here. And 90 degrees takes us here. 90 degrees will take us to here. Let's try it. 90 degrees will take us here, pointing straight to me. Oops. "90 degrees brings us straight here. That's that. Now the strut brace properly reinstalled. Remember to zero out your torque wrench before you continue.
Now to replace the plastic trim.
Now we just have a few pieces of plastic left. You might have these plastic plugs to replace. Push it too hard and it goes right through. Okay, then there's this piece of foam. And let's see, it goes this way. And it's going to hold this ground wire in place. So it's a press fit against here. And you'll have to slide it back and forth a little bit to get it to fit perfectly. Okay, nice fit. So this rubber comes around it slightly. It's firmly pressed back in all the way, and now we're going to put this ground cable back. Okay, looking good so far. A little bit worn here, but it's working. Looking good. Now just 3 more pieces of plastic. Okay, the first piece that comes back is this trim panel. Now, since I spent a little while with this out and the battery energized, I put some tape over this positive terminal. This is a positive terminal, and if you short something against it, it's bad news. So first I'll remove the tape. Then I'll make sure these are all turned 90 degrees. And first we fit it here, and then it should press down here and over here where the little holder is. Interesting. Quite fitting the way I want. There we go. Seems simple, but take your time and make sure it's fitting properly. Same thing here. Okay, all these are lined up. $90. And 90. Now you'd think this rubber should fit right over it, but on mine, it doesn't really like to. Anyway, last step, beauty cover. If you haven't already, check the rubber grommets again to make sure they're all correctly in place. I like to line mine up over the oil filler and press firmly. Okay, ready for another 75,000 miles. Let's have a beer.
So here's some torque settings that we used in the video, and here's a bit of extra from Marshall on torquing those fuel lines.
Okay, this close-up is to show you how to torque these fuel line connectors. You cannot use an ordinary torque wrench with a standard socket because there's no way to get the socket over a nut like that. So what you need is something like this. It's called a crowfoot adapter. You need a 14mm crowfoot adapter, which you can fit over that nut, okay? But you still can't fit the torque wrench on it. So, here we go. You need to put it on, click, you need to put it on an extension. And now I can torque it. However, you don't want to ratchet the torque wrench. That is to say, you need to set this torque wrench so that this crowfoot is exactly 90 degrees from the head. It has to be at a perfect 90-degree angle so that the torque setting of the wrench is going to be applied exactly to the crowfoot. Not that complicated. You can find other videos if you're not following what I'm saying here. But unfortunately, most torque wrenches, they're ratcheting and they won't lock. So you have to use a little care to make sure that you're not changing this from 90 degrees from the head, okay? So now, as long as there we go, I've set this torque wrench to the 33 Newton meters, okay? I'm gonna put a thumb here just to keep it steady. And there's the click. So I've tightened this fuel rail to exactly 33 Newton meters. That's how you do it. This is maybe the most critical setting in this entire procedure, is making sure that you don't over or under tighten these, okay? And this is how you do it.
I'd like to finish by personally thanking Marshall for taking the time and trouble to make all these recordings. As a YouTuber, I understand just how much work this involves, and it can be exhausting. Thank you, Marshall, for giving your time to help other BMW drivers. So here's some items that were used in the repair of the BMW, and also here's some tools. You may wish to pause these if you wish to just look at them in a bit more depth. I'll conclude now with some reference photographs like I normally do. So here we have the tightening sequence for the cover. So you may wish to note all this. Obviously if you undo it, you should undo it in the reverse sequence ideally, but it probably doesn't make much difference if you're throwing it in the bin anyway. But there we are. So you've been watching how to replace the engine valve cover gasket on a BMW N55 engine. And thank you for watching and supporting my channel. Please like and subscribe. This video was filmed by Marshall Goldberg and edited by Mark Savage in May 2023. And I can also be found on Instagram and Facebook as Coats and Gators.